The Sawyer Hannay Show.
All right, welcome to the show, Nicky T, my guy. Nicky is the founder of Raise Rowdy, which we're going to talk a lot about today. I'm still kind of new to the business, but from what I know, there's a clothing component, there's a podcast component, event hosting component, and a recording component now.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show. Did I define that fairly accurately?
I think so. Yeah. We're an ever-changing entity. What started out as like a blog and then a podcast has now led to 8 to 10 live events in Nashville every month. And then, work at festivals, in the marketing kind of partnership, on-site activations. And then, we dropped our first song with Miss Shelby Ray with his co-branded Raise Rowdy, which we're super excited about.
Yeah, that was exciting, man. I know you sent me the recordings. Then obviously I looked her up afterwards on social. I think I follow her on TikTok. She's really good. She does the Chris Stapleton covers. She's damn good.
That voice is undeniable, man. It's like, that's one of the craziest things about Nashville is you're constantly like wowed at the talent that's here.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelby, from the first time we heard her sing, we were just like, what? How does this voice come out of this little tiny package?
So where did you get connected? Like, where did you find her? How did that all kind of like, how did you end up recording with her?
Yeah. So honestly, like we found Shelby through another event that we were at and we were just like, wow, this girl's great. So heard her play, her original songs out at an event, didn't know much about her, just knew that we heard that voice and it was special. So since that time, we've had her booked on a bunch of our events. She was on my anniversary show, Matt's anniversary show, just someone that we like truly believe in. And then she dropped her first single in town. And while it was great, we just thought that it didn't exactly capture her voice the way that her live performances do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd originally like talked to her about, hey, why don't we cut Call Me Crazy? Like just have Kurt and Charlie and us like, do it. And they were like, well, we're kind of pushing past that song now. So then we went to Betty Crocker, which is her single she just dropped.
Okay.
So we actually have an acoustic recording of that. With Kurt on dobro as well. And then, but in the meantime, they were like, why don't we do some stuff for socials? And then kind of that's how it spiraled into, well, why don't we drop Parachute acoustic with Kurt? Charlie producing it as the first song that we co-branded. So it's kind of funny because like Chris Stapleton was one of those guys that I guess back in like 2015 that I was like, you guys need to listen to this guy. So like, before the Justin Timberlake thing happened for him, it was someone that I was like, before Raise Rowdy existed, that I was promoting. And so having it be a song that's a cover of his song, it's kind of like full circle. It's like, of course we love original music and everybody does, but a lot of how these artists start is by singing other people's songs. So kind of feels weird, but also feels right to have that first one be a cover.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's special to you. I don't know when Chris Stapleton come across my map. I've seen him twice in concert. He's one of the best live performances I've ever seen. The man can sing. It's unbelievable.
Vocals are insane.
Even when he's talking on stage, it sounds like he's singing.
Yeah.
It's just he's unreal. So it was 2015 when he come onto the scene.
Yeah, I think, he'd been a songwriter and he'd been in like Johnson Brothers and some other bands prior to that. I think that's kind of when it started like really being like Chris Stapleton doing country stuff, And I think Traveler hit, was it 2017 maybe?
Okay.
Sounds right. I'm not 100% sure on all of those dates, but ends up I was in Pittsburgh at the time and this girl that I knew went to college with a bunch of people that I was friends with. She went to like get her master's degree and she was from the same hometown as Chris. So I'd heard like, What Are You Listening To? Which was kind of like his first solo
I love
thing
that one.
Great song.
Yeah, unreal.
And then like she kind of told me more about him. And then we tried to track him down at CMA Fest, which we didn't get to do, but we tried.
Yeah.
So it was someone that was kind of on my radar. And that was, again, before we formally did Raise Rowdy. We were still just like a bunch of idiot friends going to concerts together, you know,
in the scene. So were you living in Nashville at that time, or?
No, man, I was back in Pennsylvania. I've only been in Nashville since like the end of 2020. I moved October 2020.
Okay. Is there anybody since you moved to Nashville that you've seen right from the like early ranks to kind of stardom? Well, I guess Bailey Zimmerman recently would be one for sure. He's the obvious, but is there anybody else like that in the last few years that just went from zero to hero real quick and you were kind of there to witness it?
Man, so Trey Lewis is the guy that when we moved to town, we had covered some of Trey's music.
Okay.
But we got like right when I moved to town is when the Dick Down in Dallas thing happened. So we got to like watch this independent artist that had, 1,000 or 2,000 monthly listens go from that to like where it is now, which is, I mean, millions of monthly listens on his song. That song, as crazy as it is almost as strong as ever. And it transcended country music. So it was funny too, because like we knew all of their camp. We know Alex, his manager, and like Grady Smith, who is like, I'm sure you're familiar with Grady Smith. He's like a country music, like guy that talks about it on YouTube. He has a really successful country music YouTube channel. He thought it was so well done, and the plan of releasing it was so well done that he thought there was a label involved.
Really?
Which is funny because there wasn't, but that like tells you how well the plan kind of was executed. So, honestly,
I remember hearing that song a few times, not even really paying attention to the lyrics, but just enjoying it because it was catchy. I'd catch a lyric here and there, be like, oh yeah. And it wasn't until I like consciously listened to the words, I was like, oh shit, this is like spicy, you know?
Yeah. It's funny, man. Like I actually have a freaking platinum record on my wall from Trey because the way that happened was it was one of Matt's events, who's now my business partner in Raise Rowdy at Live Oak. And he's like, Trey, why don't you play 3 of your originals? But would you also at the end play Dick Down in Dallas? Because Trey didn't write it. It was his buddies.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I was like, I recorded the whole thing. And I was like, are you cool if I post this? You know, because it's a little bit of a different song, you know? And he's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. So he,
of course not.
We posted it. And then it got picked up by like Old Row through, not just it got picked up, like one of the writers contacted Old Row that they had a contact with. And then it got picked up by Call Her Daddy. And it just kind of like gained this whole life of its own. But that video that originally like popped was one I recorded from my phone sitting at Live Oak.
That's sick, man. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
It was nuts. And then woke up the next day and it had 5,000 DMs to like friends. And I was like, what? You know,
what just happened? That's how quick it can happen down there, right?
It's wild. Man. It's nuts. And then that's one of them for sure. And then, like you said, Bailey Zimmerman, I mean, his first time, he was online and was like doing it and had been playing music, but was mostly known for trucks. And then his first time playing in front of live fans was at a Rowdy on the Row, was at one of our writers' rounds. So like that, of course, is nuts. We got to see him there. And then we got to see his first like full band show. He played Whiskey Jam, but his first like real full band show was at Rock the South, a festival that we were at.
Okay.
So we got to see his first performance and then his first like real show, which by the way was at a big festival, you know? So it was just super crazy watching that grow. And Matt's really good friends with the guys that manage Bailey. Okay. So I've of course like gotten to know them as well. So it's super interesting just getting to kind of see that from the inside a little bit.
Yeah. I seen him in Quebec City. I mean, I found him on TikTok originally, and then I seen him perform in September in Quebec City, and he was great, man. And what I like about him, and it shines through on his socials too, like he's so happy to be there. He's so grateful. It seems like every single day he's just having the time of his life, you know, which is, you know, it's pretty cool. And I mean, it wasn't, what was it, a year and a half ago? He was just working a job, and then he just quit and told his boss he was going to be a musician. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah. It's so crazy, man. Like he had this thing going where like he was big for trucks in like the TikTok scene because his family has like truck businesses where they like, you know, redo trucks and lift them and put wheels on them and stuff. So he was kind of big in that segment while he was still working his day job.
Okay.
And then he literally just started singing, and people were like, yeah, you're really good at this. Like, you should probably do that. And he already had some of that fame. So then with put together with a distinct voice like he has, it just started working. And that's when he started working with Core Entertainment, who is like Chief, the guy that manages Nickelback and had in the past kind of helped found Hinder when they were like coming up. So a guy that has a very seasoned career, you know, like has helped a lot of stars become stars. So ended up landing in good hands to where, you know, they kind of knew what to do when the star was on the rise.
And then his first year on tour, he's on tour with Morgan Wallen, the biggest probably act in the world, or biggest act in country music, you know, like that's pretty crazy.
It was so crazy. And I remember seeing him like playing his first club shows, and he was like headlining with the 45-minute set. Like he'd have the opener play an hour, and he was playing 45 because he just didn't have the music yet.
Yeah. Because he was that fresh.
Yeah. So it's super cool to watch it grow. And like Kurt, so my podcast co-host Kurt is a fantastic strings player, everything that has strings pretty much. He was on a couple of Bailey's songs, including Rockin' a Hard Place. So he played steel guitar on that song. So we have connections through that. He's been out like shooting photos for Bailey sometimes too. So it's like, it feels like Bailey's in the family, even though we don't really have anything to do with it. You know?
Right. Yeah. And I find Nashville, or just by being there for, 5-6 days at a time, it feels like it's such a close knit community, especially in the industry parts of town. And it seems like everyone is just everyone either knows everyone, or everyone's one point of contact away from the next person, and everyone's just kind of very much in the scene. And really, I'm kind of drawn to that. Like, well, not kind of, I am drawn to that. I love the city of Nashville. I'm going back again. We're hosting together, which I'm so excited about.
Me too.
And that's what I love about it. Like, it's funny, the way that I met you, or the way that I became aware of your business, first of all, before I met you, was, I was just doing a little bit of market research, looking around, asking around. I was in the city. I seen your logo around. And then obviously I followed your Instagram page for a while. And it's just funny, like, in small town, I mean, it's a big entertainment city, but such a small town feel. Like, in small town fashion, I go to Live Oak for lunch with my laptop. And in classic Nashville fashion, I stay for drinks and more drinks. And all of a sudden I bump into you, and, and then next thing I know, we're at the frickin' Ryman together, having drinks, listening to music, like such a surreal experience. So it's a big city, but it feels like a small town in a lot of ways.
It is. And that's like what you'll hear. You'll hear, hey, Nashville is a really small town inside of a big city. So the music community is very tight knit. You'll hear rumors in a normal town. You'll hear rumors that probably aren't true.
Right.
If you hear a rumor in Nashville, probably half the time it is true, just because it is like kind of that like small town, people know before they're supposed to know or whatever,
Right. I can see
funny.
that.
Like coming to town, I didn't know that. I was like, oh, that's just a rumor, and then they would start coming true. And I'm like, oh, like some of them are just rumors, but some of them are more than that,
Right.
It's
and I feel
crazy.
like it's the city. It's so interesting. Like, obviously there's Broadway, the big tourism push, and like just mayhem. Like, I'm leaving my town of 800 people, small town, and I go there. It's overstimulating, man. Broadway is just crazy. I've never been to Vegas, but I imagine it's a lot like that.
It is.
And then you have Midtown, and then you have these other parts of the city, and there's even kind of more of a hipster part of the city too, elsewhere. And you have these different pockets, and I find it's a polar different experience depending on where you are in the city.
Absolutely. Like if you're in East Nashville, I remember going to a bar in East Nashville when I was visiting, and I had a t-shirt and a baseball cap on, and people looked at me like I had the plague,
You just looked out of place.
You don't belong here, bud. None of your clothing is from 1970. Like, you don't belong here. But at the same time, also, once people get to know you, those walls come down, right?
Right.
Once someone sees the character of who you are and what you stand for, doesn't matter what you look like here,
Right.
The one thing you do want to do is you want to stand out, right? You want to be someone that people remember, whether that's your personality or the stuff that you're putting out, being quality product, whatever that is. You just want to be something that is memorable and, remarkable, to say something kind of like that.
Well, it's funny you say that. Like, I've been around enough that I've caught on to some patterns in Nashville, and when someone walks through the door, you can tell if they're an artist, first of
Yeah.
all, or if they're in the music industry, because a lot of them are dressed like characters. And I think that's because they want to be memorable, right? Like they really go all out and dress up and they look their part and that's who they are. And, but that becomes memorable because like I said, as soon as somebody walks in, you can tell if they're in the industry or if they're a musician for sure. Like when they walk in and they're wearing the outfit,
Yep.
which is cool. I like coming from small town Canada. I didn't even know that existed. That's just something we see in music videos, but it's funny. Like people really, that's how they dress. That's how they live their life day to day.
Yeah.
Like, it's wild, right?
It's super funny to see, and you'll watch it develop too. Like sometimes these kids come to town and there's 12 of them and they all look the same. But 2 years later, they all have their thing figured out.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you think about music historically, it's been like that, right? Like, Ziggy Stardust and like, Queen, like they all have iconic looks, right? Like, you have people that have alternative personas, kind of like how Granger Smith has, it's not like country music's reinventing the wheel. It's just doing the same thing that's happening. Right. I remember like going to a Wu-Tang Clan show with Matt and him being like, what's up with all this Shaolin monk stuff? I'm like, well, that's their thing,
that's their thing,
yeah, that's what makes them different. Country music's the same way. It's just the one thing I'll say about country is if it's inauthentic, they will sniff it out. Right. So it has to be you. It just has to be like the ramped up version of you. Right. So it's like, imagine yourself and your knob is on 6 and that's your normal day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. In Nashville or in the artistry career thing, if you want it to work, crank that sucker up to 9. Right. But it can't be a totally different version of you.
Yeah.
Right?
It can't be fake. Yeah.
No, it has to be you. It's just like an amplified version of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. I mean, I wondered about that being an entertainment city, how much authenticity really exists, and how much of it is fake or how much of it is, and it's kind of nice to know that, hey, people do smell that out and sniff that out, right? If you're being inauthentic. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things too is a lot of these people will move to town when they don't know who they are, right? They're trying to figure out who they are and what they want to say. We did a podcast with Ella Langley, and I remember when we first met Ella, she was like, yeah, I'm not in a big rush because I want to really know what I'm saying and who I'm talking to and who I want to be before I show other people that. So it doesn't look like I'm changing 5 or 6 times,
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Kind of a discovery. And it is a good place to discover yourself. And when I was there, I mean, a small percentage of people are from Nashville. It seems like it's all a lot of people that just move in, right? Like whether it's they're trying to make it big or they're just looking for themselves or, they're trying to figure things out. And I'm no better. I mean, I want to move there in the spring. And I've been there a handful of times. I'm going back again here soon. And like, I get it. I get the attraction, but it really seems like there's like 3 pockets to people in Nashville. There's people that are from there and people, 2 main pockets, people that just move in to try to make it or try to, find themselves there. Right.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, it is music industry related just because there is such a big hub for it there, but it's more than that. It's a hustler's paradise, man.
Yeah.
Like everyone there is willing to work 2 jobs or grind 70 hours a week. And like, that's the difference, in my opinion, compared to like where I grew up. It's like there were hustlers, you know what I mean? There were people that were working their butts off. Yeah. But like in Nashville, that's the community. That's the standard. The standard is that if you want this thing to work, you have to outwork everyone else that's doing it.
Right. And everybody's working hard to that standard high.
Yes, exactly. So it's like it honestly motivates you when you're tired to be like, other people are still working. I need to keep working too. But you do have to like manage that with, okay, I'm not like destroying myself. I'm still taking the time to look back and say, what did I do well? What did I not do well? So you can't just run forward either.
I think the most challenging part would be staying focused and disciplined. I mean, there's so many distractions, man. Every single night of the week, there's something to do, somewhere to go. There's a reason to have a beer, Yeah. Yeah. And to me, like, I know I've only been there in short periods of time, but that's something I think about if I get a place down there in the spring, which I hope to do. It's okay. I got to have my boundaries here. I got to, set those boundaries and stick to them because there's a reason to get off track every day.
Yes.
If you're not
there's
careful.
FOMO, right? Like fear of missing out. Well, if you have FOMO bad in Nashville, you're in trouble because there's 10 events every night that are free or that you could get a ticket to that are amazing.
Yep.
And it's like, you can't do all of that. You still have to do your work. You still
Mm-hmm.
have to like schedule your podcasts. You know, you still have to do all that. But you mix that in with, hey, going out, meeting new people, finding the circle of people that you want to have involved with your life.
Yep.
And then pushing forward. You know, it's all a part of that thing. Like right before this, I took a meeting with someone else that runs a writer's round and has done artist management stuff. You know what I mean? Some people would say that's competition, but in my head, if there's other people that are focusing on the right things in the industry, that's great. That's what we all want. You know, we don't want to be the only player in the game. We want to be pointing in the right direction with other people that believe too.
Right.
You know?
And the writers rounds, like that was something that became so interesting to me. I checked out, I did the Broadway thing. I checked out, I spent a couple nights at Tin Roof in Midtown and I made my way over to Live Oak. And what I really like about Live Oak is it's first of all, the atmosphere in there is fantastic, but I really like the live music and the writers rounds. And what I quickly realized by just kind of observing is a lot of talent comes up through these writers rounds, right? Where it's just a few people on stage talking, like up and comers talking about their songs and why they wrote them. And then they're singing them and they're going back and forth. It's a very casual environment. It's not a rah, high energy party, environment. It's a really nice casual environment and everyone is so good, And I mean, a lot of talents come up through, like with your experience, like who has come up through those writer round, that
Josh
system?
Josh Ross was one of them that you guys probably know pretty well in Canada.
Canadian. Exactly.
Yeah, dude. I remember meeting him at our buddy's house, like when he just had Tall Boys out, you know what I mean? And like just getting to meet him and being like, I don't know if that song's the song that's going to work, but like, I can see this thing. Like Josh is great looking. And honestly, his personality is amazing. It's very, very much people want to be around him,
Right.
And that's a big part of it too, is like having a personality where people want you around them, which is something that you kind of can control, but not always,
Yeah, of course.
So that, I mean, Ella Langley's another one. I mean, Matt would call Ella like a little sister,
Really?
So now, like she's on the scene, she's doing it. One for me that was really cool is a guy named Colby Acuff who signed over at Sony. The first time he ever played in town was one of our events because we were like, yo, if you're ever in Nashville, we'd love to have you play. So he was like, I'm never going to go to Nashville until someone books me to go to Nashville. And even though it was like a free gig,
he counted it.
Yeah. And then the next time he came, his world was different. That's right. We actually ended up connecting him. Us and another person both connected him with like Make Wake, which is his management. Right. Okay. And so it's just like, there's so many things that kind of can fall into place. And this town's great for it. Dylan Marlowe's another guy that
he's good. He's real good.
And like we covered Dylan on Raised Rowdy when he just had songs on SoundCloud. You know what I mean? Like it's like you'll see stuff like that in artists that, you're like, oh man, it's going to happen. Or maybe you're like, oh, this is really good. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Sometimes that happens too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But you'll get to watch artists that are doing it in town and then are great. And then at the same time, you'll see people that are unlimited talent and just don't do it, because it's more than just talent. It's that drive. It's the will to like, hey, I know I don't want to do these TikToks, but I know I got to grind on this stuff until I can get in front of more people. It's putting yourself in the right place to be lucky, right? They call it luck, but really being lucky is putting yourself in the right place at the right time so that something can happen.
Yeah. It's like they say an overnight success can take 10 to 20 years that nobody sees. Right. And it just feels like someone pops off, but you guys hosting 8 to 10 events a month, just based on the numbers, you're bound to work with some artists that pop off, it's just bound to happen. Right. And I think it's cool to hear those stories because I know how, you guys are working, you guys are doing the right things. And then all of a sudden you have one of those stories that it's, exciting to talk about. Yeah,
it's great, man. It's funny. Like a kid last year who I saw play for the first time, I hosted an event, a charity event for Blue Water Sunglasses, a golf tournament. And during the after party, a kid named Carson Wallace popped up.
Okay.
Carson was 19 years old, sang, and I was like, damn, this kid's good, And we knew his buddy Reed, who he came there with, and we were well aware of Reed. And then
Yep.
I was like, hey, why don't y'all play together on a round coming up? Right.
Right.
And then now Carson has all these labels courting him, you know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
he has major management now, you know what I mean? He's starting to get booked on cool gigs, you know, and all in one span of a year, from the first time I ever heard him play and no one kind of knew his name to everyone in town wants to be involved in the Carson Wallace game. You know, it can happen very quickly like that.
Right. And I wonder, like, how much talent just goes unnoticed, because it seems like every person can sing and play in that city.
They can, man. It's funny too. I remember talking to Jade Eagleson. So we've had Jade, and I've gotten to come like a little bit of buddies with him. And I remember him being like, man, when the first time I played in Nashville, I was like probably the third best guy on stage out of 3. And I was like, well, that's not the case, Jade. Like, you definitely weren't the third best guy on stage. But like, that's him thinking that, you know? But what it is, I mean, I knew how good Jade was, so I wanted to put other good people up with them. You know what I mean? So it's like, of course, I'm going to make that a great round, because I'm like, I don't want this guy being like, who are these peons that I'm playing with? You know? But part of that is like, that just makes Jade want to push harder. You know, when you see another person who isn't as big as you and hasn't had the accolades and success, that just makes you want to push harder even further and more, you know, like really perfect what you're doing, really like get it to as many people as possible.
Yeah. So. And I think it's a city that when you get there, you realize it is possible. Like, again, I'm from small town Canada, East Coast. Like, we don't produce talent like that. There's not a lot of professional athletes. There's not a lot of famous musicians, things. So in our world, it doesn't really seem possible. But I find as soon as you get to Nashville and you look around, you're like, okay, this is a city. If I had any vocal talent or musical talent, this is a city where it could happen for me, in theory, right?
Absolutely, man. And I've never lived in LA or New York, right? Like, I assume those have a similar mentality, probably in different things, maybe in music, but in other things too. But in my opinion, at least right now, there's nowhere else in the country that has such a like unbelievable bulk of musical talent as Nashville. And it used to just be country, but it's not. There's a lot of rock musicians. Matt just had a kid named Elijah on his podcast, and Elijah kind of started in the country world, but he does rock music now. It's not country rock, it's rock. It's rock. And then Taylor Acorn Matt had on his pod too, who's selling out all these club tours, you know, and it's rock music. It's not country, it's rock. So there's a place for all of that. Americana is kind of leaned in and is like a little bit of a broader scope. But there's stuff that's rock and roll. There's stuff that's blues. You know, you'll see people like Teddy Swims in town all the time, just because there's so much talent here. One of our writers, Luke, was on a gig where he was playing guitar for Eve with Dre in the room. Like, like what? Wild. You know, like just crazy things like that seem like they're fake stories are real stories here in Nashville. Which is amazing.
And people are catching on because it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's construction all around. If you just take a look, you'll see like a dozen cranes. Everyone just, buildings going up fast and everyone just talking about like throwing numbers out, whether what's true, what's not. 500 people a day are moving here, 1,000 people a day. How the hell would you know what the truth is? But I mean, there definitely is a lot of action, a lot of people catching on. And I know since I've been there, man, I've been preaching to all my friends and family, you got to go to Nashville. You got to go. We're focused. Like, we look at the Calgary Stampede. I'm sure you're aware of that event. We look at different stuff, Boots and Hearts, the Cavendish Beach Music Festival. Those events are really exciting for us here in Canada. But I'm telling people, for the same price of flying out west to BC, you could fly to Nashville. You know what I mean? And it's two very different offerings, but man, it's a special place. Yeah. And I can't wait to get down there. I leave next week. I'm going to Orange County, California for a conference for my first ever trip to California. And then I'm going over to Nashville to hang out with you guys.
Yeah. It's going to be great. We've got some of the lineup secured. We're still working on a little more, but I mean, some of the biggest artists in Canadian country music right now are going to be playing at our event, man, which is super cool.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. Yeah. And for anyone listening, that doesn't know, because I mean, 6 months ago, I didn't know what a writer's round was. Like I mentioned earlier, writer's round is basically up and comers up talking about their songs and singing in a real nice, fun, casual environment. And that's something big that Nicky does. And we, after we met and had a couple drinks, had a fun night or two out, we talked about this. We said, hey, why don't we co-host an event, a Canadian, so we can highlight some Canadian talent, because, obviously I'm Canadian.
Yep.
So I think that's really cool. So we're co-hosting our first one on the 19th.
Yep.
At Live Oak, where we met, actually. So that's a full circle thing too. And I couldn't be more excited, because I've done a lot of market research things when I'm down there, but I haven't really taken action or taking those first steps to actually, kind of do something about what I'm learning. And I'm taking those first steps with you, man. I'm excited. Yeah,
dude, it's great. I mean, getting to know you and the time that we did get to chill and spend together and just talking business, but also just not businessy business. It's just like,
of course.
Yo, what do you do? Oh, what do you do?
Yeah.
There's so much value in that, man. And I think that's one of the things that makes Nashville special is very community driven.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I remember when we got to like on the country scene, like having the guys from Country Rebel reach out to me and be like, hey, we see what you're doing, man. Like, it's awesome. And I'm like, you guys don't care that I'm like kind of living in the same world as you? They're like, dude, if we are worried about you taking some food off of the plate, that plate's not big enough. We need to grow the plate.
Right.
And I was like, that's such a great way to think about it, because not everyone's like that. Not everyone's treated us that way.
Yep.
But when we started and people didn't, I remembered that. And I said, I'm never going to be that person that does that to someone else unless they give me a reason to, right? I'm not a bleeding heart, right? But unless someone's given me a reason to treat them poorly, then I'm going to treat them with the respect that I would expect someone to treat me.
Right. And I remember getting that impression. I think I asked you straight up, like, listen, is there, what's the competition like here? Is it fierce? Are people cutthroat that? And you basically said that, like, no, like we like to help each other. It's like collaboration over competition. Right. And I really like that, because I've seen both sides of that in business. I've been around people that'll cut your throat the moment you turn around. I've been around people that, just are not interested whatsoever in communicating with you, because they're worried that, you might get an inch ahead of them or things like that. And that's not how I operate. I think there's definitely enough to go around. And once I, we chatted for a while, I got that impression from you. I said, yeah, this is definitely somebody I want to work with. And if there's places that I can help you, I want to. And if there's places that you might be able to help me, I'll ask. And if you can, I'm sure you will. And I think that's the way. I think that's the way it's got to go, because you have to enjoy it too, right? You have to enjoy who you're working with, who you're partnering with, who you're collaborating with, and even just like on a personal level, who you're chatting with. Like business has ups and downs and different headaches, different barriers, different problems, hurdles, things. Like it's nice to be able to talk to a familiar person that, kind of knows what you're going through, feels what you're going through, feels that heat, and just kind of trade information and be there for one another, right?
Man, I absolutely agree. It's like, I always remember when we started Raise Rowdy, it was like, I don't want this to be about me. Like it has to be bigger than me, because doing this, even if I had great success, doing it alone would mean nothing.
Right.
If you don't have the team and the people around you that are also enjoying that success and are also like having a good feeling of like, hey, watch this thing go where it's going, it wouldn't be anything,
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's like one of the things about the music industry too. Like Luke Combs isn't just providing for Luke Combs. He probably has a staff of 75 people that are all reliant on him touring and making enough money so that they can do their stuff too.
Right.
There's the record label, which is a big part of it. There's management, there's booking, there's the band, which we know very well. We're actually about to drop a hat with Tyler King, their band leader.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to have a hat that you're going to see on Luke Combs stage almost every time that happens.
That's unreal. Awesome.
Which is super cool. But that's because we've been buddies with those guys for years. We did a hat with Rowdy Rob. That was like our first collab hat we ever did, was with one of the guys that was in the band before. Rowdy Rob, Raise Rowdy. Of course it makes sense, Yeah. But funny enough, the guy who told me to do that collab hat was Ward Gunther that runs Whiskey Jam. He was like, why haven't you guys done a collab hat with Rowdy Rob yet? It's like low hanging fruit.
Like, that's the obvious one.
Yeah, you're right. It is, So then we did. And but that's a guy who theoretically is a competitor, right?
Right.
Ward telling us, hey, this is something you guys should definitely do.
Yep. Well, Whiskey Jam, that's a whole nother phenomenon. And I wanted to touch on that too. Like when I got down to Nashville, it was all the rave. Everyone, Whiskey Jam, Whiskey Jam. I said, I couldn't even wrap my head around what is this? Is it a clothing brand? Is it an event business? Is it like, what is this? Right. And I went to, Ray brought me to what time of year was that? It was cold because it wasn't the outdoor events. I went to like an indoor event. So I seen the smaller version of what it was. It was live music. They had a merch component, mainly hats, but their hats are popular. Now that I've seen them, I see them more often on socials. I've seen them all around the city, things like that. And then I went to the outdoor event, or so I thought. Megan Maroney was playing, and there was a good lineup. So it was packed, and I, of course, didn't get in because I was having beer at Red Door and I was too late to get in line and whatever. But I seen it. I witnessed enough of what it was, and it was mayhem. And those are free concerts, right?
Yeah. It's all
so
free.
People were seeing Megan Maroney for free, and that star-studded lineup for free on behalf of Whiskey Jam. And I remember seeing it and just being like, wow, like there's a lot of people. There were like a lot of people were into this. It was all the rave all week that I was there. Everyone, you can't miss Whiskey Jam. You can't miss Whiskey Jam, and they hosted those events that were free to go to. Their product is really great. Like they have cool stuff that they sell. And now they just moved to Broadway, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Ward moved from Midtown down to a second floor of Dierks Bentley's bar. So he hosts there on Mondays and Thursdays, which is awesome. It's definitely sounds better because the sound at Winners wasn't always the best. It's not, the room wasn't really built for sound,
Right.
It was built to be a bar. Definitely the vibes a little bit change, but it still has what makes Whiskey Jam, which is cool. And I mean, listen, if you're not evolving and growing, you're going to get left behind. So Ward, I think, has done a great job of kind of setting a benchmark to like, hey, constantly be thinking about what's next, constantly be thinking about what you want to do and where you want to go, and that's just something that me and Matt have definitely done our best to kind of like embrace as well. Like, you never know exactly what's going to happen, but you have to be willing to say, is this the right thing for me or not? And either push forward with it or decide, hey, this isn't where we want to go right now.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that online when they dropped that news, and it was after I was there, maybe a few weeks or something. So after I had that experience very vividly in my memory, I was like, holy smokes. And then they're moving to Broadway, and I seen a little bit of pushback saying, they're leaving Midtown, they're changing, but as a business owner, that's the natural evolution. The event started, that event, like series of events, started smaller, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And eventually it outgrew, where it was. And it was time, I guess, to move to Broadway for the next step. So as a business owner, I completely understand. And I felt for him when I seen a little bit of that kind of, people sharing their 2 cents on social media. We all know what social media is like. And I just felt for him because I said, as a business owner, like, you want to grow. If you have, like you don't want to get smaller for sure. Right. You don't want to go that direction, right? You want to you want to do a better version of what you're already doing all the time. And as entrepreneurs and business owners, we're bred that way. We just want to get better all the time. So to me, it was the next logical step, next obvious step for those guys. And I can't wait to go to an event there. And I'm not the biggest fan of Broadway, but I'm going to make a special trip out there just to go to one of those events because I want to see what the newer version is like, right?
Absolutely, man. And we've done that. It's like, again, you often won't catch me on a weekday down on Broadway or a weekend, honestly.
Yeah.
But we definitely have made our way down there to support Ward and support the artists that he's still making a huge platform for.
Yeah. And I love that about you guys. And it sounds like Ward, I don't know Ward, but it sounds like he's a really good guy too. That's just has everybody's best interest in mind.
Yeah, he's great, man. And he's been good to Matt and I've done 2 takeovers of Whiskey Jam's lineup. Okay. Matt's done one as well. And then when I worked at Big Loud, we did the Hicks tape takeover too of an outdoor show. That's the one where we broke the bar. So
you what? What's that story?
So we were, Hardy was the headliner. It was Hardy, John Langston, Ernest at an outdoor Whiskey Jam free show. Wow. All Hicks tape branded, which was what I was doing for Big Loud at the time, was marketing for Hicks tape. Okay. There was so many people on the deck at Losers that it fell through.
You physically broke the bar.
Physically broke the bar. I mean, it wasn't really me; it was Hardy, but you know,
I understand, man. That guy rocks hard,
dude. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that happened, and I was like, man, is this even going to happen? You know, like, but these guys, like Hardy's manager, as well as like, you know, the staff there, they're like, we've been through stuff like this before. It's going to be fine. You know, that's the thing too. The more seasoned you are, the less stuff really catches you off guard.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Destruction and chaos is just part of the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. I seen, and if there's parts of this you don't want to talk about, I mean, by all means, there's no pressure, but I seen the, Mike's post on Stevenson Ranch kind of explaining what they went through.
Yeah.
And, again, as a business owner, I went through a relatable experience, not to that extent. I don't know if you've seen that video listen to that pod, man, that was crazy.
Nuts.
You know, the money that was thrown away, wasted, stolen, however you want to say it, man. That was wild. So I remember I watched it, the whole thing, and I said, holy shit, first of all, this, like, you know, this sucks, shitty situation. Yeah. But they come out with a really great collection. They just dropped a really nice collection, you know, and it seems like they're really doing things right now, you know, like properly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's crazy because like when those guys got to town, it happened quick, right? And you're like, what are they doing? And then you realize like who's in the ownership group and like you saw them like kind of throwing around money and you're like, oh, okay, that's how it works, you know? Right. Like, of course, Mike has more money than we have, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's had an illustrious career to deserve to have that money.
Yeah,
you know?
And he's got the star power too. You
Absolutely.
know, he's a superstar, right? He's got the social media presence. He's on tour all the time. You know, he has all that too, right?
And he's a smart guy. He brought in business partners like Ernest, you know? So he brought in other big celebrities to help him push this thing, you know? So it's definitely something where you're like, you see it happening and you're like, how does it happen? And then you're like, oh crap, that's maybe how it happened so fast. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. All the right people.
But at the same time, I never heard anyone in town talk poorly about that guy. Right. Probably because he was throwing money around.
Yeah. But like, criticize the guy buying all the drinks.
Yeah. But it's a strange town, man. And there's a lot of people that are trying to be things that they aren't. Right.
Yep.
It's hard to not do that sometimes for people. Just because it is a town where if you are balling out, there's a lot of people that want to be surrounded with you, you know, and then but the problem is if you circle yourself with people like that, then when stuff goes not as great, those people will be the first people to leave, you know?
Oh, fuck yeah. Yep.
So you really like the key to this town is really like finding your tribe of people that you believe in and that believe in you. Yep. And that you absolutely know will have your back, not just people that are there because times are good or because they think it's cool at the time.
Or you're picking up the bar tab or you're,
Yep.
you're somebody important or any of those things. Yeah.
Yep.
And I worry about that in that city because it's an entertainment city and there's a lot of people there trying to get famous. There's a lot of clout chasers. There's a lot of, you know, people trying to climb that social ladder, you know, gain more social status and influence and followers and all that shit, you know. How much of that is within the music industry, you know, if any? Like, is there a lot of that stuff going on too that you have to kind of avoid or?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I think that's in any kind of industry, specifically when you have something that people want, you know. It's funny, like a term that I use and it's from Kurt is germ. So like that's someone that like is trying to overstep these like boundaries that are like normal, right? Or like act a different way around certain people, right? So when you see stuff like that happen, you kind of say, oh, okay, that's probably not someone I want to be associated with, right? And sometimes you got to learn the hard way, right? Yep. Like there's been people that have tried to use me for the little bit of things that I have had, you know what I mean? Like, totally. That's just part of it. You just kind of have to keep your guard up, but at the same time, you can't keep it up too hard because just because someone tried to screw you over or, you know, tried to gain ground themselves in not thinking about you doesn't mean that's how everyone is, you know?
Right.
So as many people as there are bad people, and there's bad people in every city.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot of good people here too, right? Yeah. There's a lot of extremely talented people that just love music.
Yeah.
And it's been a blessing to be here, honestly.
Yeah. Do you play at all or sing?
Nah, man. I just do karaoke every once in a while.
Yeah.
No,
that's a tough city to do karaoke.
Oh yeah,
everybody can sing.
Yeah, I've never really been musically inclined in terms of that. I've always heard from people that I kind of have a good ear, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I always say like Raise Rowdy is kind of like A&R for the fans, you know.
Yep.
But now that we're here, dude, that we like, I can't tell you how many artists were like, people have kind of like hit us up and say, hey, like, can you guys help with this? Or like, what do I need to do to make
Yep.
this thing work? You know, because it is hard when you are doing it and you're in the day to day to really step back and say, what do I need to do to make this go to the next level?
Right.
That's why it is important to have champions and to have people that believe in you
Mhm.
that can kind of help with that. But at the same time, sometimes you have to take that, hey, you're just not pushing hard enough right now, and that's why it's not working. You know,
Right.
you got to get on the road. If you want a
Mhm.
manager and you want a booking agent, you got to go book your own shows until you get there.
Right.
You know, it's like how willing are you to grind? How willing are you to push? And once you find some people are willing to do that, they're just kind of stuck in a rut where they're not.
Yep.
And so it's like when you can kind of help get someone out of that shell or help point them in the right direction, they have to do the work.
Yep.
But it's really fulfilling to watch them do the work after you like kind of have talks with them. So
Yep.
it's been cool, man. Like, again, I haven't been in town that long. I just moved in 2020.
Mhm.
So I still feel like I'm kind of a newbie to town, but there's so
Really?
many people that are, that are kind of like using me, not using me, but like trying to take meetings with me of like, how did you do what you did? And I'm like, I'm
Right.
still trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Right.
you
Yeah,
know?
of course. Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's all relative.
Yeah. Well, I had those questions for you when I first met you, and I had been a fan of your brand for a few months before I even knew who was running it. You know what I mean? I had been following and things. So to me, that was so interesting. But what I've realized is just like you said, there's a lot of people that are just kind of new to the city and just trying to figure it out, and everyone's just kind of figuring it out as best as they can, and navigating and things. But yeah, no, I love it. Have you explored like outside of Nashville, like just
Oh yeah.
surrounding area, Tennessee? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
we've been going to like shows that are outside of market, and I've hit
Okay.
up like the Bristol area we went to for a festival.
Okay.
And then of course like the general vicinity of a circle of around Nashville. I haven't been to like Memphis or anything like that.
No.
We oftentimes travel more to like Georgia or Alabama for shows.
Okay.
Because like when we're not hosting events, we're usually going to concerts of the artists we love.
Right.
That's kind of how
Right.
this all started.
Yeah.
So,
So how far
do
would
our best to
Alabama
do
be
that.
or Georgia? Like how far would that drive be?
2.5 to 4 hours usually, depending where it's at.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Like when I was in Pennsylvania, I was definitely doing like on a weekend, it was like a circle of 4 hours. Like I would drive 4 hours to go to a show and grab a hotel with some friends,
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of done that same thing here. We'll go to Rome, Georgia, which is like probably 3 hours away. Or we'll go to like Birmingham. We did a Trey Lewis show there, which is like, that's his hometown. So it's
Okay.
super cool to kind of get that,
Yeah.
But it's not that different than my scene back in Pittsburgh, except that 5 nights a week, there's crazy good stuff happening that you want to go to,
Yeah. Yeah.
So leaving town on the weekend is a little easier because there's not as much free, amazing stuff happening on the weekend as there is on the weekdays,
Right. So is that kind of how it goes? It's the more expensive shows on the weekends, and then during the week, it's a lot more of the free shows.
Yeah. The weekends, of course, you'll have people that'll tour through Nashville and do ticketed shows all week because they know the scene can handle that here.
Right.
But like when we're going out, so like in-town shows are a weird thing because people in town don't like buying tickets because there's another 8 events that they could go to that are free,
Free. Yep.
So you really have to and it's all aesthetic in town. So it's like, hey, it's not a good look to go have an in-town show and it'd only be a third full.
Right.
So you got to play the right sized rooms, and you have to only do it X amount of times. You got to make sure when you do it that your friends are willing to come out. That means you're comping a lot of tickets. So you're probably not making much money. It's like, it's funny. Like I could get tickets for a lot of artists to a lot of shows for free, but in Nashville, everyone's asking for those tickets.
Oh,
so it's like, it's hard,
Yep.
I don't like asking for tickets in general if we can get them, but like if we can't get them, then we'll ask, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if
yeah.
it's like sold out, we're like, yeah, we want a cup.
Yeah.
Can you help? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of
yeah.
thing. So
Yeah. No, I get that. No, it's a, yeah, man. I don't know how else to like, I'm going to share a lot of it through my content. So to my, audience with, it's a brand new podcast. So I have no idea who that's going to be, but, with my audience, I'm going to share a lot of my stuff on my socials down there, because if you haven't been there, you just don't know how great and just crazy it really is. I mean, Broadway, my first time down there when they shut the streets down, and there's people everywhere. There's fucking golf carts all lit up, driving down, people drinking in the vehicles. There's like side by side bikes going up and down the road, music blaring, like those party army truck things. You get in that, man. Like, it's just like, where am I? I feel like I'm on a different planet, right? It's just crazy.
It really is.
Yeah.
It is a spectacle. You know what I mean? Like specifically downtown Broadway is a musical spectacle.
Yeah.
You will hear music on every floor of every bar all throughout downtown. And then you get out of that and you're in Midtown and you still are hearing music at almost every bar, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny. Like Red Door is known as the bar where you're not going to have music. And that's like well thought of because every other bar has music.
Yeah.
So it's really an interesting thing. It's kind of the opposite of like my hometown where it's like, oh, let's go to the one bar that has music.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
let's go to the one bar that doesn't have music.
Right. Yeah. No, that's
Super
the same
crazy.
way it is here.
Yeah,
totally. My uncle, he grew up in Georgia, and Georgia plays Tennessee on the 18th. I know we talked about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we're going to that game together. So he's
That's
diehard Georgia fan. I've never been to a college football game. It's been on my bucket list for a really long time. When I was 20, I went to visit my family in Georgia, and my cousin was graduating from Auburn in Alabama at the time. And I was with my uncle in his vehicle, and he had a Georgia sticker in the vehicle, and he was driving, towards Alabama, which is, a rival area for a Georgia fan. And people were flipping us off, giving us the finger on the way by because of this Georgia sticker. And my uncle's like, he's like polished, like he's not like, he's a polished guy. So to see someone flip him off, I was like, oh, like what's going on here, And he's like, oh, that's normal. And I was like, oh yeah. So that was my first taste of like the rivalry down there. So I don't know the rivalry, I guess, between Tennessee and Georgia, but I think it's supposed to be a good game. That's what people are telling me.
Georgia's undefeated right now, and it's going to be a big game.
Yeah.
Any SEC school that is like not the worst school and the best school is going to be a big game,
Right.
Because even if you aren't the team that could win a national championship, you could upset the team that might win a national championship.
Right.
And that for that year is your national championship,
Yeah.
And the SEC, like historically, is just such a power conference. This year, it's actually not quite as much, like there's a lot of teams from other divisions that are doing good. But like, I mean, if you look at historically and since they've had like the bowl series, it's almost always two teams from the SEC in it,
right?
So it's like, it's super crazy. And Georgia's that team right now. They're the number one team in the SEC. They're the powerhouse,
I learned a lot of that. I watched that Florida Gators documentary. Did you see that on Netflix?
Oh yeah.
I watched that, and that really showed me the level of intensity of that division specifically, not just college football in the States, but that division specifically, and how people ride or die by their team. And one loss or two losses could disrupt your entire season. It's all over. You're a massive failure, in front of 90,000 ripping fans. Like, you make one mistake. And as college kids, I mean, that's a lot of pressure, and the staff, the coaches, all that. Like, and people go for your throat if you're a coach and you mismanage and you lose a game or something like that. Like, it's taken very serious. It seems like it's taken a lot more serious than even the NFL.
It kind of is, just because like you're never going to have that team again.
Right.
And so like, there's the onus of like, you got to do it right now, and in the NFL, you can lose 3 games and still be the number one playoff team, it's just that kind of thing, where college has had such disparity in it that there will be teams that don't lose every year.
Right.
So like you kind of have to do that if you want to win the ship.
Yep.
You know, it's like you could probably lose one game, maybe two, but that's it. After
Right.
that, it's a
And you're up against
non-successful season, which is crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And what's like the talent window for those? Like, if you're a high end prospect, do you play 2 seasons, 1 season, 3 seasons? Like,
it really depends on the prospect in college football. It's like, you now with NILs, you can come and you can make $2 million as a college athlete if you're a high enough recruit.
Yep.
So like, you don't have as much of a, hey, I need to go to the NFL to get my bag, right? Well, you're getting some of your bag there, you know?
Yeah. And that's new, right? Just in the last year or so?
Yeah, last couple of years, they started allowing that, which has been, honestly, I think, created parity in the college football scene. Not complete parity, because it's still now the biggest teams with the biggest boosters can win, but now it's not all SEC schools. Now Notre Dame, Michigan, these historical franchises that have had deep pockets forever can now use some of those deep pockets of their fans and boosters to kind of like, hey, let's get a licensing deal with this guy. And it's $2 million. Yeah, we'll make that back, you know? Like,
right.
But, and realistically, I mean, college sports has been leaning on these athletes for all of their money that they're making for so long. It's due time for them to get their own.
It is. Like, and I mean, they get the same attendance the NFL players get, but they don't get the NFL payroll. Yeah. So of course those schools are banking. They're making big bucks.
Yes.
You know, huge money.
The thing you'll see is the teams that are complaining about the NIL are the ones that were the powerhouses, you know? Or it's the like little guys that are like, hey, this isn't fixing it for us. You know?
Right. The powerhouses, because they just want to keep winning and keep the profit machine going without a cost anymore. And the little guys, they just don't have the money to compete at that level either, right?
Yep. Yeah. If you don't have
that's why there's salary caps in professional sports too. Like in the NHL, there's certain markets that if there was no salary cap, they would spend 2 to 3 times more than other teams. And it's, of course, it's not fair, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like that's my number one thing I hate about baseball in the US is like, there's just such disparity between teams. They have a luxury tax, but that doesn't mean they're not going to go spend it. You know, I love what the NFL and the NHL have done to kind of create parity in the league. You know, it's a little bit harder in college because they're not paying the athletes. They're like getting them contracts kind of, you know? So it makes it a little bit of a different play, but at the same time, it's like, there's plenty of things for an athlete now to go and make money off of their likeness, which is good.
Yeah.
I think so, at least. And NCAA sports has been living off of that forever. And now we have the ability to do that. I know in Canada, of course, there's football and stuff, but I know hockey is your guys' biggest sport, and that's what you guys played. And that is, I mean, it's the same. Like you could do it in the high school and college level, but like, as you guys know, like if you're good, you probably get on a traveling team. You probably get in like, you know, that system, and it's a different thing. They have that in basketball, but like football, that doesn't exist, you know?
So you play with your local team? Is that the idea, regardless?
Or like they're kids that are good enough where they'll like move to Las Vegas to play, right? But it's not like, that's not the common thing. It's not like, hey, this kid's so good, I want to move him here. That's always been like frowned upon.
Right.
So it's been like regional for high school, and then you go to college and it's wherever you get the offer from, you know? And that's became definitely more nationwide than it had been when I was a kid, you know?
Right.
I was a lot more like the guys that played at the University of Pittsburgh were oftentimes from the Pittsburgh area, you know?
Right.
Where now it's definitely more, you'll have players from Florida playing all around the country, you know?
Right.
Because there's so many good athletes in Florida.
We have it like the hockey up until we were about 16, we would travel like, let's say an hour to practice, whatever. But then that team to play games would travel within a few hour radius. But then once you hit 16, you play in the Quebec Major Junior or the Canadian Hockey League, because there's one on the East Coast, there's a Central, and then there's a Western version of this league. And that's when you move. So at 16, I moved to the city of Halifax, which is 3.5 hours away. I could have moved 10 hours away had that team drafted me. And then that's really where it separates the boys from the men in terms of prospects, who's going to play pro, who's not going to play pro. But yeah, like you said, like in terms of a traveling team by 16, so you're still in high school, that's when you go and you make your big push and you put it all on the line. And, so we have a really good development league here in Canada for that. So by the sounds of it, football doesn't have that equivalent for the 16-year-olds coming up through.
No, basketball has done a good job of that with like AAU sports and traveling teams, and even baseball more. But for football, it's mostly high school sports and college sports,
Okay.
So that's why I think there is also like a big onus on that college football, because like that's where it starts becoming like these super teams,
Right. Yep.
or it's just like you at least get someone for multiple years that you can like really invest in,
Right.
And then of course, when it gets to the NFL, it's just such a high level, that like you could be a great player in college and you get to the NFL and you're just like, maybe you'll play some,
Yeah. Well, that was, what was the guy's name? The quarterback for the Gators in that documentary. Tebow. Yeah. So Tebow was like the next greatest thing in college. And then he was, average in the NFL. You know, he wasn't a standout superstar. And same as Johnny what's Johnny Manziel? Is that his name? Yep. Yeah. That guy was really good in college and then had no career in the NFL, right?
No, it's a different thing, man. It's more strategy. It's more data. It's more like execution, right? Mm-hmm. In the college sport, if you're fast and you're strong, you can kind of play loose and it's okay. When you get to the NFL, that doesn't work.
Right. Because everyone's fast. Everyone's strong.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the people that you were outrunning, now every player on the field's that fast,
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that anymore. Like I remember Reggie Bush in college, and he was just so good. And he would just, if you let him go, he would outrun everyone.
Right.
Well, he went to the NFL and he was smaller than all these guys and they were just as fast.
Right.
That changed how he played. He was still a very good NFL player, but he wasn't like the best NFL player.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very high to be a very high standard to be able to get to that. And a lot of it's more than just talent. It's how often are you willing to work out? Like, what does your rehab look like when you get injuries? Like, it's all of that thing, which honestly is not that much different than like what you're talking about in the music world. It's just the other side of it. It's preparation, the goal and the want to push forward, and then making sure that everyone around you is a positive aspect. And like, if there's a cancer in your locker room, your team's not going to do shit. So it's the same way in the music world. If you have an artist that like is really dragging the team down, then there's not going to be success there.
How do those guys balance the partying and the late nights and the like to me, that's what would do me in. That's what would kill me.
Crazy. Yeah.
I don't know how the hell they pull all that off.
If we're talking about music, like I remember going on the road for a weekend with Trey Lewis and his band. And I got back to us. I was still at Big Loud at the time in the office. And they were like, does that give you like the want to go on the road? And I was like, absolutely not. It's just a grind, man.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. Like Matt was on the road full time as a tour manager. And before that as a merchandise manager. And it's just like, that's how it goes. You're just, you live that life, but it's a very different life. And that's why it's hard too. Like you'll hear so many people that are like relationships break up, and dude, imagine you're an artist on the road and you have 100 girls in your DMs every week trying to get you to give them attention. All the while, maybe your relationship at home is not going the best.
Yep.
It's easy, specifically if there's alcohol and stuff involved, to kind of stray from that. Right.
Yep.
So you have to be a really good dude to not do that, or a really good chick. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yep.
You have to really love the person you're with or want to be faithful, because there's so much temptation. And it's just a grind, man. Like you get on site, you'll load in at 8 a.m. for a 10 p.m. show sometimes, So you're literally hurry up and wait. And that's, sometimes you're driving the van from show to show. You got a show the next day that's 6 hours away. Someone's going to drive it,
Yeah.
Till you get in that bus and stuff.
And life happens too. Like you just mentioned the relationship thing. Like who's to say you're not going through a breakup halfway through your tour, and you have to get on stage and perform in front of tens of thousands of people and act like everything's awesome and fantastic in your life, when really maybe there's trouble at home, or maybe, people pass away, you miss important events, birthdays, weddings, stuff like that. Like it's a huge it's a huge undertaking, you know, and and everyone always sees the glamour. Wow, he's famous, he's rich, she's famous. Look at, you know, but there's a lot of stuff I'm sure that goes on behind the scenes that isn't made public, you know, to protect that image of the artist and things like that, right? And probably a lot of hardship and it's hard on your body, man, when you're not sleeping often, maybe you're not exercising as often, you're not eating as healthy. You know, well, you're on a high because it's 11 p.m. Your show just finished. You want to go grab a couple beer. All of a sudden, it's 2 a.m. You're hungover the next day. Like, you know, like there's a lot to it.
Yes, that lifestyle's tough. And that's one of the reasons why you'll see, hey, it's okay to give up drinking. No one in Nashville is going to complain about that because they all see how hard that can be. Right. So that's one of the things that I do love too, is like, when someone's like, hey, I'm not drinking, no one here is pushing you to, really? Stop that, wuss. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
interesting. Yeah.
Like they get it. They're like, okay. You know, like, because they've seen it so many other times with other people. The way you live your life, it has an effect on everything you do. So if you're out 7 days a week drinking alcohol.
Oh, yeah, of course.
What do you think you're going to attract? You know what I mean? Like other people that are out 7 days a week drinking alcohol, you know?
Exactly.
If you're on the road 5 days a week and you're partying the whole time, that's going to be what happens. Or anyone else is not going to want to be involved, you know? So it's definitely a balancing thing, I think, for the artists. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges is your road life and your home life kind of meshing, you know? And I think people definitely get better with that as they get on the road longer because you get tired of living a certain way, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But I think that's probably one of the things that I've seen that's like a challenge for these artists when you are making it, is you're thought to like have lived or want to live this certain way. Right. And then maybe you get there and you're like, that's not it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But
exactly.
even just as someone that's in the back end, right? Like, dude, like Matt talks about all the time. He's like, I would never be in the relationship I'm in if I was still on the road, you know, because it takes someone that has a lot of trust and a lot of security to feel comfortable with someone else being on the road, getting hit on all the time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
It's just how it works, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's what I like about, that new brand, Liquid Death. That's what it's called, right? The water brand.
Yeah.
I love that move. That, like, and it's funny now that I am aware of that brand, which is just water in a cool can, basically, and a wicked marketing strategy. They, you know, I see Liquid Death, like in Nashville, I've seen a lot of people drinking that. And I was like, it's a, you know,
feels
you
like
get
a pounder.
It feels like a beer. It feels like a drink you'd drink at a bar, but it's water. And I think I like that. I think that's respectable. And, alcohol, I mean, it can be really destructive for people and people's, you know, as people in my life that alcohol has had an impact on and things like that. So I'll never tease somebody that doesn't want to have a drink, but you definitely feel that pressure in those environments, in those scenes, you know, everyone's having fun, jumping around, everyone's loose and comfortable because they have a couple drinks in them, you know, and sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable to be dead sober in those environments, you know?
Yes. I always say everyone in Nashville wants to see you drinking, but no one wants to see you drunk. Right. So that's a hard line to toe, specifically if people are buying you drinks. Like one of the things I talk about, like with our crew, is like, hey, you should be 2 drinks under drunk at all times, so that if someone walks over with a beer and a shot, you could rip the shot, slowly drink the beer, and you're not too messed up.
Right.
You know. There's a thin line between that. And I always talk about too. It's like, if you mess up when you're sober, you made a mistake. If you mess up when you're 3 beers deep, you're drunk.
Right.
That's how this works, right?
Right.
Whether that's the case or not, that's the perception.
That is definitely the perception.
You have to be okay with that, or you have to make sure that you're not. You know, get your work done, get your stuff squared away. And one of my big things is like, I do not like talking business while we're.
Yeah, me neither. My grandfather taught me that.
Big picture stuff, ideas, floating things, fine, right? But if you're trying to talk dollars and cents with me while we're drinking, I'm going to get severely uncomfortable, you know?
As you should.
Yeah, because there's a time and a place for all of that. And it's definitely not when we're 6 beers deep at midnight at a bar, you know?
Exactly. Yep.
If that's where you're doing your business, I'm not a person you probably want to do business with, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And I like to have fun as much as the next guy, you know? But it's like, there has to be a separation of that. Yeah.
Time and place. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So is there any I just, before we wrap this up, I want to ask you, is there anything you're really excited about here coming up soon? Any shows, any, events you're hosting, or any people, artists you're recording with, like anything like that got you really excited?
Yeah, man, we are working on the CMA Awards watch party with Sony record label, which is our first like formal event with Sony, which we're super excited about.
Awesome.
Matt's going to be doing the majority of the emceeing for it because he's a dog at emceeing, and I'm going to kind of be like helping like do the back end, kind of like relations, kinds of things, anything that they need. But so that is our second event this year with a major record label. So
awesome, man.
We did
Congratulations.
an event with Warner. Yeah, man. We did an event with Warner, and then we're doing one with Sony, which I'm super excited about. And it's just good because it's funny, like a lot of people think we're anti-label. And I always tell people, I'm like, we're not anti-label at all. We're just pro-artist. Those two things aren't exclusive to each other,
Right.
We just want everyone to succeed, that we believe in. And it has nothing to do with if they have a label or not. A label is a great partner for a lot of artists. And we love record labels. I worked at one for a year and a half, we just want to make sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to know going in, because that's going to make them a successful label artist just as much as it's going to make them a successful artist. Right. So it's just like, everyone having the right tools in their tool belt, that's kind of what we want to help with. And it's been super cool to get labels that kind of understand what we do, whether it was Big Loud hiring me or whether it's Warner seeing us kind of be in the scene and host, and now Sony like bringing us in to help with their CMA watch party. It's super cool.
That's cool.
So,
yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Yeah, Sony,
and we got a great Canadian event coming up with you, brother.
That's right, the 19th, man. I was waiting for the plug.
I got my Canadian flag ready that we had for our last one. I was gonna say, like, I need like a Canadian shirt like we wear with American flags. I need like a cut off like Canadian shirt.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll have it for this one. Maybe
we won't have it for this event, but I could definitely make that happen for you.
Yeah.
No,
they'll be like, cool. Are you Canadian? I'll be like, no, but I love Canada. Man, and we have some great artists. We had Tyler Joe Miller play this week on Sunday.
Okay. Cool.
And we had Andrew Hyatt. Andrew's going to be playing our event on when we do too.
All right.
And then we have Owen Riegling, who's like another up and comer in the Canadian scene. Yep. He's going to be playing next week. So we're leading into all these Canadian events with even more Canadian artists.
Oh, I love it. And Ali Walker, who's a friend of mine for a long time. She reached out, after I think maybe you or somebody on your team reached out to her and was like, "Hey, what's up with this?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, we're doing that." Like, so it's funny, like, because I've known her for a long time, and she's really popping off. She just won an award this week, actually. She's really popping off in the scene now, and I've seen her grind, man, for years and work so hard and do so many things right for so long. So to see her pop off now is cool, and it's funny that she's a mutual between us. Yeah. And Ben Chase too, obviously.
Yes.
I know him. And so it's it's cool, man. I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for it. Yep.
Yeah. Stoked for it. Again, thank you for partnering with us. And
of course.
We're going to have a cool merch piece. You'll be able to get there too. So if anybody's in the Nashville area or flies down, just stalking Sawyer, come by.
Don't give them my hotel address.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna have some merch there. We have a collab piece, which I'm really excited about. I'm gonna be keeping one of those shirts for myself because I'm gonna want to wear the shit out of it. So I guess last thing, where can everybody find you? Where can people get a hold of you? Where can they see your work? Where can they, your social tags and everything?
Yeah, our social handle is @RaisedRowdy. So make sure you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I don't know, wherever you find social media things. And then we have a couple podcasts in our network. Mine is called Tales from the Front Row, the Raised Rowdy podcast. And then make sure you listen to Matt's, which is Outside the Round as well. His is a little bit more conversational. Mine's more a little bit like artist interviewee. And then we have Raised Rowdy Racing, which is a NASCAR podcast. And then Rowdy Alternative, which is like kind of more rock leaning, a little bit more of like band guys, stuff like that. So cool. Anywhere you listen to podcasts or anywhere you look at social media, just hit us up. If you type in Raised Rowdy, you'll find us.
Cool. I love that. And it's funny, now that we're talking about social media and Instagram, I was creeping whatever one night. I couldn't sleep and I was looking at different stuff. And I was looking at, I clicked on Morgan Wallen's following to see if we had any mutuals, and Morgan Wallen follows you guys.
Oh yeah.
So for anyone listening, It's cool enough for Morgan Wallen to follow Raise Rowdy. So give him a follow. It's really good stuff there.
Yeah, Morgan broke our website by posting a picture of a hat that we sent him. And this was probably 2018, 2019.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this guy broke our website just by posting, not even posting a link to our hat, just posting our hat and tagging us.
People went searching for it, huh?
Crazy. Yeah.
Wild. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Bro.
I'm sure we'll be in touch here over the next, week and a half,
Yes.
and then I'll be there in the flesh and we're going to be hanging out. So I can't wait to see you.
Absolutely, man. You too.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Bye.
The Sawyer Hannay Show.